Interview is taking place in Dave's home in Frankenmuth, Michigan. Dave, please list your service name, rank, and squadron number.
United States Marine Corps, Corporal with the 1st Marine Division.
Now, where were you born and raised?
Fort Ewing, Michigan.
And what's your family's background?
My father was from the South in Georgia, worked in the Morton Salt Factory, and my mother was a homemaker.
And what's your educational background?
High school and some college courses while I worked at Veritech.
Now, at the time of the war, were you in a relationship, married, or single?
I was single.
And trolling for ladies.
No relationship.
Now, were you drafted or did you volunteer for military?
I volunteered for enlistment.
And how old were you?
I was 18 years old.
What did you feel like when you decided to volunteer?
Well, I was working at a gas station. I graduated from high school, working at a gas station, and that was about the only jobs available. And a good friend of mine who enlisted talked me into enlisting in the Marines with him.
What did you what did you expect what it would be like? Did you have any idea, or?
I did. I was just going in.
Did you think you were going off to war?
Well, we kind of figured that everybody was. When you enlisted or drafted, you pretty much it was a given that you would be going to Vietnam.
At the time you enlisted, what do you recall was going on in Vietnam?
There wasn't nothing really major battles going on or anything, but they were building the troops. Troop buildup was going on a lot more.
Mm-hmm. How did your friends and family react to your decision to enlist?
Well, they were a little bit surprised because they didn't know about it, but I didn't have to have any signatures because I was 18, and I just come home and said, guess what, I enlisted in the Marines and I leave in about 30 days.
Was your brother mad?
He didn't say too much. He was small yet, so he didn't say too much.
Now, describe your basic training, like where, what happened, what your thoughts were about it.
Well, my basic training was out in San Diego at the Marine Corps Recruit Depot, and the night we arrived, it was about midnight, and at that time, everybody that was in our platoon thought they'd made a big mistake. Excuse me. When the DI come out of nowhere, and the way they told you to stand here on these yellow footprints until somebody came, and seemed like it was an hour, but it probably wasn't that long, and you weren't supposed to speak, and the biggest guy in our platoon spoke, and next thing he was laying on the ground. That's when we figured, oh, this is wrong.
Now, did your basic training change you in any way? Did it prepare you for Vietnam?
I think so. For one thing, it got everybody in shape, and it got you to realize that in the Marine Corps, everybody was a team, and you learned basically to work together, and the discipline was the big thing that you come out of boot camp with. You knew what discipline meant.
Mm-hmm. What was your schedule when you were there? Like from a day in your life?
Well, we were up at Reveille. It was about 4:30 in the morning, and we went and ate a really good Marine Corps breakfast, and then you were out doing PT, physical fitness, and running, and you learning drill, marching.
And how was that all day?
That was all day. We worked till lunch, and went and had lunch, and then we went back out again, and you worked until dinner, and then if you were lucky, you got a little bit of time before taps.
So no personal time.
You had very little personal time. They gave you personal time to write. You were to write a letter home, and you were supposed to write a letter home at least once a week.
So letters were your only form of communication?
Yes, we were not allowed any phone calls with our family.
And how long were you in basic training?
It was 12 weeks.
Okay. When was that? Like, do you remember?
Well, I went in on August 15th, and I came home, I think I got home in sometime in November for 30 days leave.
What year was that?
That was in 1966.
Okay.
And come home for 30 days leave and went back for some infantry training, and then shipped out to Vietnam.
Wow. When did you ship to Vietnam? Before Christmas or after?
No, my training I was in training until April. I went to Vietnam April, no, March. I went to Vietnam in March, around March the 15th of 1967.
Now, what did you think or feel about the Vietnamese War? Like the war, the people, and the war at the time that you became, active in duty.
Well, at that time I felt the war was justified, and that you should go and do your part. That was one reason I enlisted. And the people that I met over there, most of them, they were all pretty much glad we were there. And I felt that it was probably one of the better life experiences that I had.
Now, who told you about the reasons for the war? And like, when did they tell you that during basic training or before?
Well, most of the reasons for the war you heard, you read, it was in the paper, the news that you read before you went.
Okay.
But they told you basically what the newspapers told you, that the reason we're there was because to stop the communism from expanding, and that we needed to be there to help these people win their independence.
And like, when you were in your training, did you have your superiors like drilling into you, like, this is why we're going to be there, this is what we need to do? Did they ever have like discussions like that, or was it just you guys were there and you were going to do it?
The main thing they explained was the people, was the history of the people there, and the main thing they drilled into you was that you had to go there, and your object was to protect them, and basically you have to keep yourself alive to get back home. That was what they drilled into you most of the time.
Now, what were your feelings like when you actually received your orders for like when you were shipping off for war and it was reality?
Well, we got our orders for Vietnam right when we graduated in boot camp, and our platoon sergeant, who had been in for, he'd probably been in for 10 or 15 years. When you got your orders, everybody pretty much expected you were going to get those orders, so it didn't come as a surprise. But the platoon sergeant, he pretty much said, I apologize for us getting those orders, because he wanted to be able to go with us, but he said they don't do that anymore. And they used to in the Marine Corps. When you went through training with your platoon sergeant, he went with you like during World War II. So he pretty much apologized and wished us luck and sent us on our way. I mean, that was about it.
Were you like anxious, scared, worried, concerned?
I think everybody was worried and concerned, because you didn't know what you were going to get into. I was probably probably lucky when my job over there was driving truck with an artillery battery, so I wasn't out in the field. We still got our share of some action, but we weren't out in the boondocks like the grunts were.
Now, what was the trip from the States to Vietnam like, and how did you travel? And
oh, it was fun. We flew commercial airlines from California to Okinawa, and it was Continental Airlines, and it was pretty much, we partied all the way over on the plane. I mean, we had the stewardess. At that time, they were still called stewardess, but we were able to have some drinks, and it was just one big party.
So it was all military on the plane?
It was all military. It was a whole, I forget what size jet it was, but they flew us to Okinawa, And then we spent a week in Okinawa for processing, and then from Okinawa, we flew to we got our assignments in Okinawa for what outfit we were going to. And then we flew from Okinawa to, I flew from Okinawa to Da Nang, and then from Da Nang to Chu Lai, where our headquarters was, company, and then from there we went out to our companies.
Was it a long plane flight over there?
It was, well, from the States to Okinawa, it was, I'm trying to think, it was probably 6-8 hour trip.
And then how long were you in Okinawa for?
We were there for a week.
Oh, okay. And then, like, how long from when you landed there to get to your final?
There it wasn't that long, it was maybe 3 hours or something like that.
And they just drove you around, or you flew from
They flew us from there to Da Nang, and then from Da Nang we went to by helicopter to Chu Lai, and then we were there for 2 days in Chu Lai, and then we went from there to our my case was a artillery battery.
Mm-hmm. And what were your first impressions of Vietnam once you got there?
It was hot and dirty.
Like hot as in like, how hot would you think it was?
I mean, it was hot. It was
like 90s
the
probably?
humidity. It was 90s to 100s, and that was the warm season, and then you would have when I got there, it was the hot season, dry season, and then you had your monsoon season, where it rained a lot, and it didn't get real cold, but it seemed colder because it had been so hot before you, and then you're wet. So.
Because you got there in our springtime, so when was like the monsoon season?
The monsoon was like their monsoon season was like January, December, January,
okay.
February.
Like our winter season.
Yeah, yeah.
Was it like a grassy, plush area, or was it pretty like dirty?
The area, my first area, I was stationed in An Hoa for 6 months there, and it was, of course, we were we were right by an airstrip, and it was pretty open there. It was, we had an artillery base there, and there was a medical area and a Red Cross area. It was like, so we were, and we had an infantry company stationed there with us too, but it was open. Mm-hmm. We had rice paddies all around us, but the area we were at was pretty much open. There weren't many trees or anything.
Okay. And now you enlisted when you were 18, but by the time you went over, were you 19 at that point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was 19 when I went over there, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what unit were you assigned to again?
Yeah, I was in the 2nd Battalion, 11th Marines, Echo Battery in the 1st Marine Division. And it was an artillery battery. We had 105 howitzers and 155 howitzers, and I was with motor transport, so we provided all the transportation we had all the ammo into the artillery bunkers, and then we did convoys pick up the grunts out in the field and bring them back.
I guess we already kind of talked about the area that you were in. You said it was an airstrip, and then like how many buildings and facilities did you guys have?
Well, we actually had barracks that we lived in. They called them hooches, but they were just a building that, like our motor pool, we had our own hooch, and it would sleep like maybe 10, 12 people.
It was just beds?
Just cots, and then with air mattresses, and then we made our own shower outside. There was no water in them, and we had our own shower. We just set up a drum, and we were able to heat it once in a while, get some hot water for a shower. Most time it was cold shower. But and when we had a building for storing our equipment for repairing the trucks, but we had all the artillery group people had their own little barracks, and then that was basically it. There's probably maybe 6 or 8 buildings in our little compound area.
How many people do you think were there in that
We
area?
probably had, I'd say maybe 40 people total.
And did you guys stay like in your area, or did people come and go from different?
Well, we could go over and visit each other, and we had bunkers out front of the artillery bunkers, and that's we had. Our job was we had to man those at night for guard duty out. So we usually 4 men on a watch in each bunker, and there was like 4 bunkers.
So like, what's like a typical day in your life there, like with your job duties and?
Well, we would have to, in my job, we would have to make sure that the guns were resupplied with ammo every day. And we'd have to make a water run because we didn't have water. We had to go into a village that was just outside, and they had a water there, a well there. And we'd have to fill up what they call a water buffalo. It was a big tank, and we'd have to haul that in twice a day for water for everybody. And if the infantry needed, or runs as we call them, if they needed to be brought back in from an operation, we would run out and grab them, or we'd haul supplies out to, they were set up out on a different area, we'd do that sort of thing. And we were usually, we'd be up at, if you didn't have bunker watch, you could sleep in probably till, you can get up to like 7 or 8.
Mm-hmm.
7, mostly 7 if you wanted some chow from the mess hall.
And did you get like personal time to like hang out, or was
Oh yeah,
everyone?
yeah. If there wasn't nothing going on, as long as you got your work done, you could maybe have half a day with nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could do, that was your time.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't much you could do because you couldn't go any place, but
Play cards, hang
play
out.
cards. We did play some basketball. We had a basketball hoop, but most of the time you just hung out and didn't.
Got a tan?
Yeah.
What were like some of the types of food, and I know we kind of talked about the weather. I guess the weather-wise, was it all year really hot, and except for the rain?
It was hot almost every day. I mean, there was no rain at all until you got to the monsoon season, and then you had rain almost every day for weeks. Mm-hmm. And then it was just nothing but mud. But at Anwa, where we were at there for 6 months, we did have hot chow every day. We had a mess hall set up in a tent, and they actually were able to prepare us hot food every day.
What kind of things did they feed you?
Well, we had powdered scrambled eggs.
Yummy.
Yeah. And powdered milk. Once in a while we would get real milk, but most of the time it was powdered. They just mixed it up, and it was trying to get it. Nothing was really cold because we had no refrigeration.
Mm-hmm.
We had that was usually breakfast. We'd have sausage or bacon, and then lunch was, sometimes they'd have some kind of a soup, or else you'd have hamburgers or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And dinners were sometimes, chicken and hamburgers again or something like that. It was nothing fancy, but you at least had hot food.
Mm-hmm. Well, American food, I guess.
And it was American food, yeah.
Did you ever eat anything like Vietnamese?
Yes. I went out. I had a couple of times we'd go out when we were on runs. We'd stop and have. I actually had rice with fish heads in it one day, but I didn't eat the fish heads, but some of the rice. And then they had their local. We did have for our recreation time, at least in Anwa, we had a beer tent where we would get, as long as we had beer at night, only certain people could go at a time, and you could have beer at the beer tent, but it was never cold, it was always hot.
And it was Vietnamese beer? Or?
No, it was American beer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You could buy Vietnamese beer in the villages, but this was brought up from Da Nang. And in Anwa, the first Christmas there, for a while I was stationed there, but then I got sent to Da Nang is there like a rear echelon, because when the guns would break down, they would airlift them by helicopter to Da Nang. Well, then they had to have somebody there with a truck to haul them over to maintenance. So the guy that was in Da Nang when I arrived got sent home. I mean, his time was up, so I got picked to go to Da Nang, which was really pretty good duty there. I was by myself. I was my own boss, and all I had to do was be ready if they called and said they were bringing a gun in. I had to be at the helipad to pick up the truck and take it over to maintenance. Or if the captain or lieutenants came down, I had to be at the airstrip to pick them up.
And that was a bigger like base area?
Da Nang was huge. It was big, yes.
Yeah.
And more secure. We very seldom ever got any attacks at Da Nang when I was there. And so I was down there, and that first Christmas I was there, they had no beer for Christmas, and I had this lieutenant come down, and he rode down and he says, we had some new guys come in we were picking up, and he said, we're picking up a pallet of beer over at the PX, and he says, we're gonna take it to the guys, we're gonna catch a convoy. Well, from Da Nang to Anhua was probably a 3 or 4 hour ride, and we missed the convoy. So the lieutenant said, what do you think? I said, well, let's go, we'll catch up to them. So we went without any escorts down the highway, and we had these 2 new recruits. They had no weapons with them, and I had my weapon, the lieutenant had a weapon, that's all we had, and we drove from Da Nang, and we caught up with them at the river crossing outside of Anhua, and we made it there with their beer in time for Christmas Eve, so everybody was pretty happy about that.
So it's pretty dangerous not to have an escort when
Well,
you're
you really shouldn't be running down the highway by yourself with one truck. So,
yeah, and 2 guns.
yeah. But we made it. Everybody was happy, so.
So I mean, like, for fun, like, I guess you'd probably write letters home, like you said.
You write letters home, or you get together with, music was a big deal over there. You could go to the we had an actual PX in Anhua, and you go over there and you could buy tape. Back then it was reel-to-reel tapes, and everybody was buying those and recording all the music. So you'd sit around playing music or playing cards or just shooting the breeze with everybody.
Is the PX like a general store?
Yeah, it's like a general store, yeah. They sell everything there, food, cigarettes, beer, pop.
Now, did you have money when you were over there? Like, how did you?
You got paid in, it was military currency, and it was good at the PX. And but you didn't really have any use for money that much over there.
If you didn't use all your military money, did
Well,
they give it to you?
it converted back. Like you could send, like I would send money home just to put in a savings account, because you just go to, like you could go to the PX and there's like a post office there, and you could make a money order out and just send the money home. Or you could actually have it taken out of your monthly pay if you wanted to automatically. So that's what most people did. But then I was only in Anhua for 6 months, and then we went from there to Fubai, and that was an experience. That we went by air. We loaded with our trucks. We had a gun on the back. We had to back it onto the airplane, and then the plane took. You had to sit in the truck with your foot on the brake. And the back of the plane where you backed up would close, but didn't close all the way. You could see out, and you had to be in there so that you could have extra brake. You had the brakes on the truck. So when they took off, so we moved everything up to Fubai, and then we were only up to Fubai, which was a pretty good sized military base. It was north of the northern part of Vietnam. And we were up there for a few months, and we actually got more rocket attacks there than we did back in Anhua, because we're up in the northern part. And then from there we went out to a place called Phu Loc 6, which was outside of Fubai, which was nothing except we made a camped there. We were the only ones there. Was our artillery battery.
What was one of your most memorable experiences?
What, most over there? Most memorable experiences. I guess probably when I was able to come home. I
Yeah.
think everybody was hoping to be able to come home.
When did you, like, how did you find out when you were going to be able to come back, or?
Well, you usually found out about 30 days ahead of time you got your orders. And usually at 30 days, when you got that 30-day mark, you didn't have to go out on any convoys, or if they couldn't, you weren't supposed to have to go out on any convoys or any missions like that.
Well, when you went to Vietnam, did you know how long you were going to be there for, or was
You knew you were going to be there 13 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I was there from March the 15th to April the 15th of '68.
Okay.
So how long I was there.
And what was maybe one of your most frightening experiences?
Well, we got in Fubai. We got hit pretty bad there one night, and we never got anybody. We didn't have anybody killed, but we had some seriously wounded. And the one night we got attacked pretty good during the Tet Offensive, which was in February of '68, and we took a pretty good beating that night. And but like I said, unfortunately nobody was killed, but we had a couple people actually got their feet blown off, and pretty bad wounded, but they all survived.
Now, did you have like medical aid on site, or did you have?
We had a corpsman. Each
Okay.
unit has a Navy corpsman, and they're basically, they do pretty much out there. They can do pretty much anything a doctor would do, but they're just a corpsman.
Now, like the people who lost limbs and stuff, were they transferred to like a bigger
They were
facility?
airlifted out, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they got airlifted out to the bigger facilities. Like the corpsman's job was just to patch them up enough to get them out of there.
Now, what, like when you were attacked, like during the Tet Offensive, what happened? Everything was calm, and then all.
Well, yeah, in fact, it was most of the time our attacks were at night.
Okay.
And so the night we got attacked, I wasn't even on watch. We were in our hooches sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in fact, we were there. We didn't have time to, when we got hit, we didn't even have time to get our bunkers. By your hooch, you always build a sandbag bunker to take hide in. Well, ours wasn't even done yet the night we got hit. So there was 4 of us that night in sleeping when it hit, and we were trying to find a place to take cover, and we ended up inside an ammo bunker. Is the only place we could find to take cover, because what they hit us with was rockets and mortars that night.
So did you sleep like dressed so that in case you had?
Oh yeah. You never you always slept with your utilities on, your clothes on.
Your boots on?
No, I didn't have boots on. Well, I should say I did have another pretty experience was when we were out at this Fulak 6. We were that was really out in the middle of the boondocks, and we had a little stream run through where we had set up, and we were in tents out there, and so there was a bunch of us down at the creek taking our evening baths, and we're down there. We had our rifles with us, but we'd never been gassed before, and our gas masks were back in our tents, and all of a sudden we started taking incoming mortars, and we're in this creek taking our baths, and then they started throwing gas in on us, so here we are, wrapping towels around us, and running back trying to get back and holding our breath to get back to get our gas mask on. And that was we took another pretty good beating there that night too.
That was like tear gas type stuff?
Yeah, like a tear gas type thing, yeah. So from that point on, we never left without our gas mask with us.
Now, like when those guys were, attacking, were they coming on, or did they stay?
We never had any ground forces there
Okay.
come at us. They just were from out away from us were with mortars and rockets. That's what they were hitting us with. So we had ground forces one night in Fubai, but they never got inside the wire. So I was on bunker watch that night. So.
And now, like, when you guys were being fired out with the mortars and stuff, did you, like, you guys had the same type of forces you were sending back at them?
Well, we had, but you don't know where they're at, is the problem. We had, I had our artillery battery, we would fire back, but
yeah.
When we had the ground forces, even our artillery would bring it right down to ground level, and they had special rounds that would shoot straight out at the enemy as they're trying to get through the wire.
So you never had to, like, you were just picking the guys up who were doing the work of, like, finding where their camps were, kind of how they were doing to you guys at night?
Right.
So would you, like, they'd have, like, a neutral ground where you'd go meet the grunts that you were picking up type
Well,
thing?
they would just call in and say, we're gonna be at this point, and can you come and pick us up? There was no neutral ground. It was like, you know.
You were at mercy the whole time?
Yeah. The only thing we should have known when we were out at that Fulak 6 base that we were gonna get hit that day. And that day it was daylight when we got hit. Because they allowed the local Vietnamese could come in and set up, like we had a barber, he was a Vietnamese, and he would come in and give us haircuts. And the day we got hit, he never showed up.
Oh, so he knew.
So they knew, they were probably told they were gonna hit us that day and not to be there.
Well, because were the Vietnamese people sometimes the enemy too, or how?
Yes, you didn't, that guy cutting our hair, he could have been one of them ones out there.
So you never really knew?
You didn't know, you really couldn't tell who was on whose side. Until they were there attacking you.
So you probably just didn't talk much when you were around the locals other than like casual?
No.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah, you just didn't know.
On a daily basis, like, what did you have on you? What was, like, guns or?
Well, you never went without your rifle. You always had to wear a flak jacket and helmet, unless you were sitting in your tent. But if you were out in your truck driving, you always had a flak jacket on and a helmet and your rifle with you.
What's a flak jacket?
Flak jacket is, it's supposed to stop any shrapnel from, it won't stop a bullet, but it would stop like a shrapnel from a grenade, or if you're far enough.
So they didn't have bulletproof vests at that point?
No, we didn't have bulletproof vest, and we didn't have the armor that they have now.
Now the shrapnel vests, the flak vests, did they work, or were there instances where people?
Well, they wouldn't work if you're close enough to a grenade or to a mortar going off. They're not going to stop the shrapnel. But
that was something.
But it was better than nothing. So they were just heavy, and they were like a vest, basically, a sleeveless vest. And most of the time you wore them instead of a shirt. You just wore that because you just couldn't put a shirt on, and it was too hot with everything on it. So.
Did you have like knives and stuff on you and things as well?
Well, you had a bayonet for your rifle, and you always hear you had a cartridge belt with magazines on it, and your bayonet was on that. Normally, we just kept those in the truck, and you had hand grenades with you that you also, but that was basically all you carried.
Ever get to use a grenade?
Oh yes. Yep.
Probably only when they were being used against you.
Yeah, you just didn't go out there to use
for fun.
Right.
Were you ever injured at all?
No.
Anybody like you were driving with or anything like that in your convoys?
No, but I had an injury over there, but it really wasn't. I had a tooth knocked out over there, but it was just on it really wasn't even combat related. Well, I guess it was, but we were on a convoy, and the truck we got attacked, and truck in front of me. You're not supposed to, when you get ambushed on a convoy, you're supposed to keep going. You're not supposed to stop. And the truck in front of me was a new guy, and he stopped.
Oh no.
And I ran into the back of him because I put my foot on the gas to go, and he stops.
Oh no.
And then I hit the steering wheel with my mouth, because of course they don't have seatbelts in the trucks.
Or airbags, yeah.
Or airbags. So I went forward and broke my tooth half off. But that was, we just went to the dentist. They had a dental back at the camp area, and we just went in and got a camp put on it. That was it.
So you had people like shooting at your trucks?
Yes.
And you were trying to get out of there, and the guy
Yes.
stops, and
Yeah.
and everyone's like, "What the heck? We want to get out of
Right,
here."
yeah. So we got him moving. It didn't damage my truck enough that we couldn't go. So once we got him, we said a few words and got him motivated and moving.
You had like a like walkie-talkie. Like how did
No,
you
we
just
just,
yelled?
yeah. He got the message that you better get moving, so.
Were you carrying like guns or troops?
We
or-
were taking supplies out to a mortar company that was on a mountain. We took supplies out to them that day. And of course, we had ammo for them, for their mortars, and then we had food supplies and stuff like that for them, and mail.
Were there any times where you really feared for your life? I mean, kind of felt like there was a close call, or?
Well, I suppose when you're getting mortared, you never know where the mortar's gonna land, or the rocket, so, you know, anybody that says they're not scared there's something wrong with it, because you gotta be scared. You just don't know what's gonna happen.
Now, you hear those things launch? Is that?
You can hear them, you can actually hear them. If you can't hear them coming in, then you're in trouble.
Oh, no.
Yeah, because you can hear the rockets, they sound like a freight train going overhead when they're coming in. So,
And when they hit, like, how much of an area do they affect?
although, depending on their size, the mortars don't affect the bigger area. The rockets can really, depending on what size rocket they were using, could, like when we got hit in Fubai, we lost a gun, and one of the big 105s, and we lost a couple of big bunkers, took direct hits, and that's what the guys that were manning the guns were the ones, the 105s were the ones that got injured, because they were out there trying to shoot rounds back. So.
Well, that's good. At least you only lost half a tooth.
Yeah, that was it, yeah.
So we kind of talked about, you know, some missions and jobs and that. Did you depend a lot on mail while you were in Vietnam?
Oh, everybody does. Everybody looked forward to mail. That was the big thing.
Now, like your grandparents and brother, were they sending you letters?
Yeah,
or?
I got letters from them, I got letters from my aunts and uncles, and got letters from a couple of girls. And so yeah, and you always, like, you would get packages, you could get packages,
Okay.
and, you know, they'd send cookies and stuff like that. Everybody was, you had to hide those, because if somebody see you with a box of cookies, they were gone.
How often, like, would you get mail?
At least, usually once a week, at least once a
Okay.
week we would get it, depending on the weather and what else was going on.
Now, was it like a big delay from when they sent it to you to when you got it? Or?
It took probably about a week
Okay.
to get stuff
Not too
over
bad.
there. And if the mail come without any delays, you could get about a week.
Was it hard to, I mean, in this day and age, you know, we have cell phones and email and text messaging, but
Right.
then you didn't have those types of communication, but was it still extremely hard to not have, you know, your family who cared about you there to say hi?
Well, yeah, because you didn't, for the 13 months, you didn't talk to them. Now, everybody is given a week of R&R over there, and you can go, they have certain places you can go. And I went to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia for a week. And I was able to make a phone call home there and talk to everybody, but that's about,
Probably a limited time period.
well, it depends on what you want to spend.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you know, on your call, because it's actually a public phone.
Okay.
Because you actually go there and you're in a hotel for the week. And so, but you could get calls depending on, in Da Nang you could make calls home, but we were never there long enough to do that. They'd have a deal where you could call from well, I guess even from ours, the radio, you could call by radio and get like a ham operator in the US, and then they had a setup so you could make a call that way. But we never were able to do that, but some places could.
Now, when did you get your R&R week?
I'm trying to remember when I got that. Let me see. I got that in, would have been probably it was in '67, probably around October of '67, somewhere in there, November. You had to be there. I think we had to be there like 6 months before you could go on R&R.
And what did you do when you were off for the week?
Just sightsee, party, got drunk at the bars with all the other, usually you had guys, buddies go with you. You could get a couple at the same time. So, yeah.
Sounds interesting. Probably was nice to be like a break from worrying about being shot at or
because they flew you flew right directly from Da Nang. They flew you right from Da Nang to wherever you were going. You could go to Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. You could go to Bangkok, Thailand. You could go to Japan. You could go to Hawaii. Most of the guys that were married went to Hawaii because their wives met them there for that.
Okay.
The hot spot was Australia. That's where I wanted to go, but I didn't have enough rank. You had to be up high enough in the rank to get to go there. They only allowed so many. So.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
What were your impressions and experiences with the Vietnamese? Most of the time I had good relationships with them. We had, the ones I always had contact with wanted us there. The one place we used to, when we were in Anwa, there was a trash dump, and one of the jobs we had to do was we had to haul all the empty ammo. The ammo comes in cardboard cylinders, and when you take the rounds out of there, then that was considered trash. So we would take all that stuff down to the trash dumps, and then the ammo boxes were wood, and that was highly prized by the Vietnamese because they would use that wood to build their hooches with. Well, when you go to the trash dump, there was always kids at the trash dump, so we would always take treats to them that we had, like the cakes from the sea rations and stuff. We would take that down to them, so we always got to talk. You always got to talk to them, and they would always kind of look forward to you coming down there if you did that. What did you think about like the lifestyles that they lived?
Well, most of them it was pretty sad. I mean, they lived in they were scrounging for food all the time, and living in these little shacks, and so you felt bad for them. So that's why you would always take food and stuff for them, and we used to get in arguments with the Vietnamese soldiers because they would be at the trash dump, and we'd be giving wood and stuff to the mama sans, which the women, and they would try to take it away from them. We'd kind of get in some arguments with them.
It's not like they got anything, you wanted them, it was nothing to you.
You had to be there to make sure they got the stuff, or else the older guys or the soldiers would take it away from them.
Because they didn't do, other than maybe the barber or a little store or something, there weren't really jobs for the people farming maybe? Or?
Well, they farmed a lot of rice. The rice was a big deal, and in the village where we were, they actually had what they considered a blacksmith, but he did welding and stuff in the military. We would take stuff there to have it fixed if we couldn't fix it ourselves. So there was some other, but very, very little. Most people were just farmers.
And what did you think about the guys that you served with? Were you good buddies with them? And
yes, all of them were all good buddies. In fact, the one guy, we still got time?
No, just making sure it's still good.
Okay. The one good friend of mine, we were in motor transport together. In fact, he was the sergeant, and we continued being buddies when we come back to the States. We were both in North Carolina. And we had contact for a while, but then we kind of lost contact.
And now, none of the people that you worked with were killed during, or were there people?
No, there was the friend that talked me into enlisting was killed over there, but we weren't.
But you guys weren't together.
We weren't together.
Did you see him at all when you were over there? Or?
No, he didn't come in until he got there during the Tet Offensive, which was in February of 1968. And I came home in April of 1968. Well, we never got to see each other because he was up at Quezon, which was one of the big battles up there, and that's where he was killed.
Mm.
And I was home on leave when he got killed, and I wanted to stay for the funeral, but they wouldn't allow me to stay any longer than my leave. But and he didn't have to be over there. We enlisted. We were both at the gas station. He was a mechanic, and he enlisted to be a mechanic. They told him he was going to be a mechanic in the air wing, and so he enlisted for 4 years, and I went in and enlisted for 3, and I just said, whatever you want to give me as a job.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got motor transport,
Mm-hmm.
and they made him a cook, and he was supposed to be guaranteed. Well, all of us in boot camp, we were all in boot camp together. All of us went to Vietnam except him, and he was a cook for the officers in El Toro, California. It felt bad because we were all over in Vietnam, and he wasn't. So he volunteered to become a grunt in the infantry to get over there, and then he got over there and got killed.
Because he wanted to be part of what was going
Yeah.
on, and he didn't feel.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of like combat operations did you participate in? And I guess we kind of described a couple of them, but
Yeah. Well, the Tet Offensive, which is the Vietnamese New Year, which is in February, that was the big offensive that I was in, and then I was in we were support for the Battle of Hue. I wasn't actually in the city of Hue, but we were artillery battery. We fired support for them, and then we were trying to think what else. That was the 2 major ones right there that we were in.
were there more injuries to like the people who, like the grunts who were out in, I guess, the fields per se, kind of out pursuing the people than
Yes.
the big bases where you guys were?
Yes. The only time we took casualties was when they would mortar us at night or and that sort of thing. So that's where most of the injuries would come. Now, when I left, our artillery battery I was with they were getting more. They were out with less support with them, and so they were getting more casualties and hit more when I left.
Yeah, because there weren't as many people to guard it.
Right. Yeah.
Wow. I guess we kind of already talked about that question. It was said some people felt that the U.S. kind of held back and that they should have gone more full force during the war. What do you feel like about the strength of the American?
Well, I think we should have we should have went more full force. We should have had more people over there and just finished the thing and been done with it. But my feeling and a lot of the guys I know, there was a lot of politics was involved. Like we couldn't even, on watch at night, if we saw movement in our wire, or we could not fire unless we got permission. So we had to call on our field phones to the command bunker and tell them, hey, we got something going on out here moving around. And sometimes they would give you permission to shoot, and other times they wouldn't.
So you just sit there wondering?
We just sit there, watch and see what was going on. So to me, that was more a little bit of a political. They didn't want you to do anything, so.
Disrupt the peace.
Right.
But then it's like, disrupt it before it gets to me,
Right.
or, just wait around. What was I gonna say about that one? I know we kind of talked about, injuries, and you had said really nobody that you worked with was seriously injured. It was more of the people that were out in the field.
Well, we did have some people that I gotta take this back, I forgot this, but we had, with our company, we had what was called forward observers. And it was usually an officer, a lieutenant, and then an enlisted person who was his radio operator, and they would go out with the grunts, and they were the ones that coordinated the fire missions for our for the artillery. And so they were out there with the grunts, and we did have a lieutenant that was that I knew. Not personally, but we knew all of them. We had him, he was killed, and we had a couple of enlisted men killed out there. But they were in our battery, but they were actually you just would see them at lunch and talk to them. So but yeah, that was a high risk, one of the high risk jobs.
And people knew that, or
Yes, they knew that.
did they ask for that job, or were people just?
Well, you just get that job. Now they did come to us and say they could never keep those positions filled.
Well.
So they kept that because you either got killed or wounded, and they wanted volunteers. They would train you right there to be a forward observer. And they didn't get too many takers.
No, that'd be kind of scary.
Right.
Now, did you witness the use of napalm when you were there?
Yes, we did. We certainly did. We got hit at this Fulak 6. We got hit there a lot, and we were on the side of a mountain. And there was a CB base moved in beside us, and they got hit one night and they got overrun. And they actually used the napalm right next to our base.
Is that like, did you guys put your gas masks on?
Well, no, we didn't put gas mask on. It was just, because all it does is it burst into, it just burst, it catches everything on fire. Napalm, it just hits the ground and slides along and just everything burns.
Huh.
So we did witness that, yes.
And a lot of it was like grassy areas, so it just kind of like, would it catch the ground and everything on fire?
Yeah, just catch on fire, yeah.
Now, were you ever in an area that was sprayed or defoliated with the Agent Orange?
Yes, almost every place was there. Yeah.
And did they ever tell you like what it? I mean, you knew what it was and what it was to do.
No, we didn't know at the time.
And that was the U.S. doing that, or?
Yes, because they would do that to clear out the jungle area and kill all of it so that you could see more, clear out the area.
Did anyone ever have, like, anyone you know ever have any effects after that type of stuff happened, or?
Not that, no, I don't know anybody that did.
Just kind of.
Yeah.
Let's see. Now, were you comfortable and did you feel like you had a reasonable standard of living when you were there during war?
I had a lot better than a lot of the grunts. I mean, we at least had a roof over, most of the time a roof over our head, and we were able to get 3 meals a day. But for the first 6 months it was like that, but then when we went up it was more or less, you didn't have all those comforts. But.
Now, what effects did the war have on you physically and mentally?
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff you think about, and it took me quite a few years. I would have nightmares, dreams about it, and we'd wake up in the middle of the night. But I didn't have as much problems as a lot of guys did. The guys that were the grunts were the ones that had a lot of the mental problems and the PTSD stuff they called it. They had.
Because maybe more of like the one-on-one combat with them.
Right. Yep.
That's kind of a bonus, I guess.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah.
It would be hard, I would think, to be face to face with somebody, standing right there, and you have to make a choice. It's you or them.
It's either you or them. Yeah.
And I'm sure it's hard too to imagine that somebody wanted to kill you. I mean, it's like we're all, you're all people, but they.
Yeah. You don't really think about it at the time.
Yeah, you just kind of react.
Because you just react. I mean, you went through all the training, and you if you see, I guess when the reality kicks in is when you see them loading the body bags onto the helicopters. That you don't think about it anymore. You know that if you can't stop to think about it. You just have to react.
Yeah, kind of doing it for those who were lost during it.
Right.
Do you think it was right for the U.S. to be at war that time?
I do, but a lot of people, a lot of the people that volunteered did, but I don't know. I can't speak for the people that were drafted, but because in the Marines you didn't have any really draftees; it was all volunteer. So I know there's people that didn't think we should be there, but yeah, I did, and so.
Now, what did you and I guess your friends think of the enemies? Like, who did you think they were? Like, I mean, what was your idea of the people they were?
Well, the problem there was you didn't know who the enemy was, because during the day they could, like I said, they could be your barber, they cut your hair, they could be guy working at the blacksmith shop, welding shop, and then at night they come out there to try to kill you. I guess I didn't have any. I really didn't think about it because if they were shooting at me, then they were the enemy, and you were going to shoot back. So
it's pretty clear cut.
Yeah.
Now, how did you feel about like the war news that was being televised, maybe before and after you went, I guess?
Well, before I went, I really didn't pay any attention to the news that much. I mean, just out of high school, didn't really care about that much of the news until I enlisted. Well, then you start looking at the news more, and you knew what was going on basically over there. And I guess most of in the Marines, we agreed with it. And the only thing we didn't like was the reports of the protests and stuff, that was going on when you saw that.
So like when you came home, I mean, obviously, yeah, you wouldn't like the protests because you just served and you knew that there was a reason. You saw the people that weren't coming home to their families, and I mean, you lived it. What was your reaction like? Were you still extremely proud of what you had done, or were you more secret of what you had done?
I still wore my uniform. I was proud of it, and I got called the names and everything at the airports, but not everybody called you that. So you only had a few. But most of the guys I knew, they wore their uniforms, and it didn't bother them.
What kind of things did people say to you guys?
Like baby killers and stuff like that. And,
you're like, yeah, we weren't killing babies, but okay.
Right, but you just shouldn't be there, and so.
There's always people, I guess, that agree or disagree with the war. It had to be kind of hard though for you guys, you and your buddies, to come back and have people saying that, where you're like, you have no idea.
Well, yeah, I shouldn't say it didn't bother you. It did bother you, but you tried to ignore it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no sense getting in an argument with them. We would just try to walk away and ignore them as best you could.
Yeah. Now, was that, do you remember, I mean, they didn't react like that to World War II veterans when they were coming back. So this was this something where, I mean, did you guys kind of feel cheated by the American people?
Well, we did. We did. And a lot of them still do, because when we come back from that war, there were no parades or whatever, and they didn't really, all you heard was the negative stuff. And even with the war now, I mean, it's, at least fortunately now, there's none of that negativity toward the troops.
When you were in Vietnam, did your views of the war change at all? Maybe become...
The only view that changed was when they would do the political stuff about, you can't do this with you couldn't do this without permission or that. Then you kind of got to think of it's more political. So that was the only thing that upset most of us, was that the guys I know, was that they were being too political over certain things.
Now, how did you feel when the Vietnam War finally ended? You were home at that point.
Well, I wasn't happy the way it ended, because we really didn't accomplish what we set over there to do. I mean, they ended up becoming the communism anyway, so it was, you kind of think then that a lot of those guys, their lives were lost for nothing. So.
What did you think about the My Lai massacre? Were you guys aware? Because that was as you were coming home?
That was as I was coming home. I guess you really don't know the facts unless you were there.
Yeah.
That was my feeling on it. Until you have been there, granted it wasn't right for the women, especially the children, but you don't know.
Yeah, because you weren't there
You weren't there, and you don't know what those guys had been through. And you just don't know what you would do in that situation. So I really wasn't going to judge them
Yeah.
on what they were saying in the news.
Was it hard though to like, I mean, being that, yeah, you weren't a part of that, but being that you were over there, like to hear the things they were saying, and then
Right.
as somebody who, you know, was a Marine, you know what you guys were trained to do, and you know
Right.
that those people probably weren't, I mean, they're humans. I don't think
Right.
they were doing what they did just to simply
Right.
do it. So
Right.
you knew there had to be a reason, but
Right.
that would be tough. Now, like the laws of war, were you ever given instructions about civilians, what to look out for, kind of thing?
Well, you were always told that you had to present yourself in a what's the word I want to use? You had to be I can't think of the word I want. You had to present yourself in a loyal, ethical manner. I mean, you just couldn't. You shouldn't. You were told not to go out there, you know, and harass civilians, and you were to treat them like you would want to be treated. I mean, it wasn't their fault they were in the position they are, and so we were, you know, you were told, yeah, you're treated with respect, and that's the way most of us felt. I mean, you have an occasional person that's going to be an idiot in any war, in any branch. So, but we were told to conduct ourselves in a highly
Kind of like a professional
manner. Yes.
Did you ever see anybody kind of mistreating the locals and civilians?
Yeah, you saw them, and most of us would get right on their case.
So that's kind of how they were, I guess, corrected when they behaved like that.
Yeah,
There wasn't really.
If they were caught at it, but a lot of them were caught. So, but most of the time, if somebody witnessed it, they would do something about it. So.
What lessons do you feel that the U.S. learned from their involvement in Vietnam?
In my opinion, I don't think they learned much of anything. I mean, we're still jumping into something that I think is basically that Afghanistan could turn out to be another Vietnam. That they're going in there doing this kind of the same things.
Do you feel that sometimes maybe people, I mean, obviously in Vietnam they ended up still being communists, that it's not always our place to maybe be involved in that?
It could be, yes, that could be, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at that time, I
mean,
think.
especially if people don't want you there. But see, now, most of the South Vietnamese people wanted us there. But I'm not so sure about Afghanistan and Iraq, so, you know, you hear reports that they don't want you there. So why should we be there?
And it's the same thing, like you said, you're not there, so you don't really know what the troops are going through. I mean, yeah, that's tough. Have you ever been to the Vietnam Memorial in Washington?
No, I have not, but one day I'm going to go.
Something to see.
Yeah, I've just been putting it off, I guess.
Well, you might get there eventually with Gene wanting to.
Right.
Is there one thought about your wartime experience that you'd want to share, like with, you know, your grandkids and your future grandkids, like about what happened?
Well, I don't really feel there's much to share that you should share about it. Maybe there is, but I really don't talk that much about it.
Well, it's hard too, because I mean, maybe you feel like it's not important, but it is. That was a different day and age. Like,
right.
I mean, it's for even me being in my late 20s. It's not war nowadays. I don't feel is anything like it was before.
Right.
Like, I mean, like, you know, you saw Twin Towers go down, just all this other stuff.
Sure.
It's not. It's a different type. Like, it is interesting.
Yes.
Is there anything you want to add that, you know, we didn't cover that you just kind of want to share about?
I can't really think of anything other than I just hope that I hope other generations don't have to go through that again, but I've always thought that, but yet we are going through it again. I just hope that our kids and grandkids and stuff don't have to go through it.
If you were in the same place as you were when you enlisted, would you do it again?
I would do the same thing again, yes. Yes.
Cool. Well, thank you
Okay.
for your interview.
Okay.